Good evening, my friends. The main news we had previous week is that GDPR is finally here. Every software company was preparing for this, and most likely you have got a few dozens of emails from every service from Coursera to Heroku. And in this video, I will try to help you to get the hang of GDPR if you have no clue about it or if you just want to refresh your knowledge, your memory. First question, what GDPR is? It stands for General Data Protection Regulations. And to explain it, I need to say that it seems that European Union government doesn't really like big companies which collect tons of data about its citizens. Because after collection, they may use it in some hidden, unclear ways or sell it to other companies. Who knows to which companies and how these companies will be using this data. And returning back to the abbreviation GDPR, the first word general is not actually true because it's not general in terms of the entire world. It's general in terms of European Union. So every European Union country must obey this rule, or every company which works with European Union citizens. So it's mostly every big company in the world. It is important to understand that GDPR is not a plan of some evil geniuses trying to mine gold nuggets from poor software companies. It is actually the opposite. It is a very useful law for us, for plain users. Yeah, I mean, we're software developers, but when we are not developing software for money, we are actually users. It is useful because it gives you, or at least tries to give you, the possibility to control, to manage data you're giving to different digital companies. Or maybe you're not giving it explicitly. Maybe they collecting it in some sort of way. For example, logs on their services, or logs of your history. Or for example, you removed your order on Amazon and they don't remove it, they just mark it as deleted. I have no idea what Amazon is doing with our orders. This is not like some kind of information, it's just an idea. In some services, instead of removing things, we're just making soft removal. We marking it as deleted. Obviously, it brings a terrible headache for all these software companies who are working in European Union or with European Union citizens. But just to count, in European Union we have this amount of citizens, and we have about this amount of IT companies, of software companies, or companies represented in the web, in terms of that they are collecting something. And you see that this number is a way bigger. So the possible good impact here is kind of more important than possible bad impact. It's not possible, it's definitely bad impact. Let's now try to dive deeper in the lawyer's dictionary of GDPR and to understand some parties or some terms in the GDPR law. The first thing is personal data. It is either anything which can be used for identify some person, or which can be used to identify some person after some manipulations, maybe after combining it with some sort of tool or some sort of other database or other table. Like IP address. My IP address does not 100% refers to me. But if you give it to the internet provider, then they can derive this data, they can derive my personality. They can understand that I was connected via this IP address at that point of time. So this is potentially identifiable information. Second thing is anonymized and pseudonymized data. Data can be called anonymous if there is no way of deriving information, deriving personal information from this data. So there is no evident, no clear way to identify a user standing behind this data. Like one-time generated user session or randomly generated UID which used only once. By the way, your user's UID in your database is already not anonymous data. It's pseudonymized, such a word. It's pseudonymized data because it doesn't make any sense outside of your database, but together with your database, it makes it possible to identify a user. So pseudonymized data is data which obfuscated in some sort of way, maybe hashed, maybe like assigned to some randomly generated string or whatever, but still which can be linked to the user, to the persona, the person. And just to understand, it is much better to have pseudonymized data rather than clearly stored full information about your user. The fourth term is data subject. You are a data subject, I am a data subject. So the data subject is a person whose personal data is processed by a data controller. For your startup, data subject is your user. And the next question is, what the hell is data controller? So many things to discuss here. Data controller. It is an organization which collects data. So in the case of startup, it is a startup itself. It is important to understand that data controller determines purposes and like the way and conditions of how data is processed and stored. And in case of GDPR violation, data controller will be paying the fine. Data processor, it can be third-party tool, service, or it can be part of your business. It is something which, some tool, some service which analyzes data of your users, data of data subjects. In case it's a third-party provider, it can be, for example, Google Analytics. So if you have just your simple blog, like I have, zonoff.me, and you have Google Analytics there, and it analyzes your users, Google Analytics is data processor, and my blog is data controller. Next term is processing. What actually processing stands for? It is basically everything related to your data, every action related to your data. It is collection of data, it is any sort of analysis on your data, or it is even a machine learning. And the last term to understand, what is sensitive data? What data actually should be stored with some purpose, with some rules. Oh, that's a huge list. It includes sex, sexual orientation, religion, health information, ethnic origin, biometric data, political opinions, and a lot of other things. Wow, at least now I hope we understand the basic GDPR terms. If you don't, I don't know, try to rewind back and see it again and watch it again. And now we'll move on to the rules, to the requirements GDPR actually creates for us. And just to mention, they're quite meaningful. The first one, and the most important by me, is data purpose specification. A company should justify the purpose of why every piece of data is collected from this user. For example, if you're a service provider like for food delivery, you obviously need either email or most likely phone number of your user to identify like the contact information. You may also not may, you definitely also need his or her address to deliver the food. But most likely you don't need, for example, Facebook profile or even IP address. And by this law, this abstract food delivery company now can ask for your Facebook profile only if they can really tell you why do they need it. Not just implicitly somewhere, but only if they really need you to share something. If they suggest you that to serve their business purpose, they need your Facebook profile. Like in other case, you cannot share with your friends that you just have eaten some amazing sushi bowl or whatever. The second important topic here is giving a user ability to manage his or her data. In managing, it also includes complete removal, complete destroy. You can request any company who's GDPR compliant, obviously, to remove all your data completely. Not mark it with deleted true, but erase it. Really exterminate it. And another part of this rule is that you can also check what data is actually collected about you. So you can download all the data which is related to your usage of this service. For example, for Twitter, you should be able to download the list of your tweets, list of analytical interactions which are related to you, which are coupled to you. For example, they can anonymize some of your interactions. If they need it just for analytical purposes, they don't need actually to know that it belongs to you. They just need to know that it belongs to someone, to some user, maybe from some country, and that should be enough. Obviously, marketing people will require also like age group, browser, blah blah blah, and at some point of time it can transform to pseudonymized data rather than anonymized. Because if you know about me, my country of origin, country where I am now, I don't know, my internet provider, my age, my browser, my maybe profession, my preferences, you can target me that I'm a software engineer living in this country, in this city, using OS X, and blah blah blah, and in the result you can not precisely but kind of closely understand who I am. Another part of this rule is that you can ask this service provider to transfer your data to another service provider, which in case of Twitter doesn't make much sense, but maybe in some strange future you will be able to transfer your tweets into Facebook completely, with maybe all your retweets and followers. Yeah, that sounds strange. The next interesting requirement is security. And it is not only interesting, but it is also a bit vague by me. It contains a few things. First one is leak notification. So if you realize that your data had been leaked, you should notify your users, at least whose data had been leaked, about this leak in 72 hours, which may sound a bit obvious. But if you remember, there was a case with Yahoo who had data leak and they were hiding it for like 2 years, and they had 500 million users' data leaked. Can you imagine? Like, yeah, obviously you can imagine because it is a history. It happened. Yes. And to make it not happen again, yeah, obviously any data can be leaked. That's possible, unfortunately. But to not make it happen that it will be hidden for 2 years, this data gives this requirement. And another part of this rule, which I named being vague, that GDPR tells you that you should follow some recommendations of basic security standards and sporadically perform some security check. Ding. That's enough with rules. What will happen with a company which decides to just not give a shit? The company will be penalized with up to 20 million euro fine, or up to 4% of their annual revenue, annual worldwide turnover, which is bigger. I mean, which number will be bigger? This can be the fine. It is not like fixed size, it can be lower, actually. I didn't understand this before. It is not set in stone that the fine can be only 20 millions. It can be lower as well. And to add insult to injury, let me tell you the very frequently asked question answer. To which size of the company this GDPR, or actually this fine, can be applied to? Is it only to big service providers like Google, Amazon, Yahoo, and Microsoft? Unfortunately, it is not. Every company, even if it's just tiny startup, should be GDPR compliant. Sad news, sad but true. Sad but true. But don't worry too much, my young pet project maker. If you just created your small startup in European Union or for European Union citizens, you most likely will not be penalized. Especially if you're trying to comply with GDPR. If you completely don't do nothing, yeah, probably you may be sued. But in general case, if you at least try to be compliant, if you ask for explicit user consent, if you collect only data you needed, you will be fine. Please don't sue me if after watching my video you will decide to not do anything with your startup, and then you will get a fine, and then you'll tell, this guy told us to not do anything, it should be enough. Nope. Use your head. Use your head. But don't be worried too much. There are few basic requirements you definitely should implement. Like, as I said, always ask for explicit consent. If you need users' full name, please tell why do you need this full name. If you need his or her email, tell why do you need this email. And no implicitly automatically checked checkboxes. No, please. This is also an issue. Like, you have already pre-checked checkbox, subscribe to the newsletter. No, this is terrible. I mean, this is terrible in general, and this is terrible in terms of GDPR. And also try to not store too much of the data which you don't need. That's finally it. I think it is my longest video. I hope your company or your blog or your small startup is already at least to some extent GDPR compliant, or you are moving towards. And so I wish you to continue providing great user experience and to never get this fine. All the best for you, my friends. Subscribe to the video, go and check out my blog where I'm texting. Yeah, I'm doing it much better than I'm speaking, I can assure you. See you very, very maybe soon.